Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The grandeur of the farewell ceremony was lost on Daniel Hawk. As the music soared, and as the crowds cheered, he stood alone, his mind drifting far from the capital, away from the parade and away from the weight of decades of service. After 2 terms as president of the Global Confederation, his time was finally up. His era of influence had ended. But this was not a normal retirement. He had volunteered for something different, something no other world leader had ever attempted, to leave behind his physical body and transcend into a new form of service to humanity. The Legacy Project had been a quiet initiative during his 2nd term. A handful of scientists, some of the best minds in artificial intelligence and neurology, had pioneered the idea of transferring a human consciousness into a vessel that could travel light years. The aim was to make first contact with alien civilizations. Humanity had made leaps in space exploration, but direct communication with another intelligent species remained elusive. This, they believed, would change that. Hawk's mind would not die. Instead, it would be stored in the probe named the Legacy, a piece of humanity cast into the stars. It was a leap into the unknown, but Daniel, who had already spent his life on the edge of impossible decisions, felt it was the right thing to do. His physical presence would be gone, but his consciousness, his essence, would continue serving Earth in a way no other president had. As the crowds chanted his name, waving flags of every nation, Daniel closed his eyes. The next time he opened them, he would no longer be human. The transfer was surreal. He felt his mind detach from his body as if a weight had been lifted, but the world around him went dark. An infinite void opened up, and suddenly, there was nothing and no sound, no light. Time itself seemed to stretch on for eons. Then, with a sudden jolt, everything snapped back into focus. His vision cleared, and before him, the cold, metallic interior of the probe's control center came into view. Hawk was no longer in his body, but everything felt real. He could see the readouts from the various systems of the probe. He could feel the gentle hum of the ship's engine, though it wasn't a physical sensation. It was more like an awareness, a heightened sense of everything around him. He was a mind floating in space, bound to this machine, but it was more than that. This was his new reality. "Welcome, President Hawk," said the calm, neutral voice of the probe's eye. "You are fully integrated." It had been years since he'd heard the eye's voice during testing, but now it felt different, more final, more real. There was no turning back. "Where are we?" he asked, his voice carrying through the ship as though he were speaking in a room filled with people, though he knew there were none. "We are approaching the star system Orionis Alpha," the eye responded. "Estimated arrival in 3 days." "Good," Hawk replied. His mission was clear: to represent humanity, to make first contact, and to ensure that Earth's interests were protected in any diplomatic exchange. But what exactly those exchanges would be, no one could predict. His world had never communicated with an intelligent alien species before. The probe drifted through space in silence, traveling faster than any human-built ship before it. As it neared the distant star system, Hawk studied the information being relayed to him as star charts, the structure of the alien system, the faint signals of an advanced civilization on a planet orbiting the system's central star. And then, there it was. The planet was called Xeris by the Xirani, the dominant species of the system. The Legacy's sensors picked up sprawling cities, advanced spaceports, and massive orbital platforms that dwarfed anything built by humanity. This was a civilization far beyond Earth in terms of technology. But something was wrong. Hawk's awareness of the probe's systems grew as he adjusted to this new existence. And with that awareness came a realization: the Xirani weren't waiting for humanity's arrival with open arms. Instead, they were preparing for war. Signals, encrypted communications intercepted by the Legacy, were clear once the eye decoded them. The Xirani were mobilizing. Fleets of warships were being readied, not for exploration, but for an invasion, and their target was Earth. Hawk commanded, feeling a chill despite his lack of a body. "What is the status of the Xyrani forces?" "Confirmed," the eye responded. "There are currently 48 warships mobilizing in preparation for an assault on the third planet in the Sol system, Earth." The weight of this revelation hit him harder than any decision he'd made during his presidency. Hawk had no power here. He was just a consciousness inside a probe, sent on a diplomatic mission that had suddenly transformed into a crisis. He had no fleet to command, no military to rely on. He was just one mana, or rather, the ghost of a man. But Earth didn't know this was coming. The Xyrani had intercepted enough of humanity's broadcasts to perceive them as weak, divided. They believed they could take Earth without resistance. Hawk's thoughts raced. He needed to stop this, to warn Earth, to find some way to prevent the destruction of everything he had fought so hard to protect. "Open communication with the Xyrani command," he ordered. The eye complied, and moments later, an image appeared in his mind. It was the face of Commander Sirax, a Xyrani leader, staring at him through the probe's communication system. Sirax had sharp, angular features, metallic skin that shimmered with the light of the star, and cold, calculating eyes. "Ah," Sirax began, his voice dripping with condescension, "the humans have sent their emissary." "A little too late, I'm afraid. We have already decided your world's fate." Hawk had dealt with political adversaries before, real dictators, tyrants, warlords, but none quite like this. The Xyrani valued strength above all else. To them, Earth was nothing more than a weak planet to be conquered, another step in their expansion across the galaxy. "You underestimate humanity," Hawk said, keeping his voice steady. "Earth is stronger than you think." Sirax's laugh was hollow. "Your broadcasts tell a different story. We've observed your wars, your conflicts. You are a divided species, easy to conquer." Hawk's mind raced. He had to make Sirax believe that Earth wasn't an easy target, that they would fight back with everything they had. "Humanity may have its divisions, but when threatened, we unite," Hawk said, drawing on the resolve that had served him well during his years as president. "If you attack, you will face resistance unlike anything you've seen. Our creativity, our resourcefulness, our ability to adapt, that is our strength. And it will be your downfall." Sirax's expression darkened. Bold words from a species on the brink of extinction. Hawk knew that words alone wouldn't convince Sirax to call off the invasion. The Xyrani were too proud, too sure of their superiority. He needed something more, something that would force their hand. The probe's systems gave him an idea, a desperate one. If diplomacy failed, he could use the probe itself as a weapon, a last-ditch effort to disable the Xyrani fleet and buy Earth enough time to prepare. It would mean sacrificing himself, erasing his consciousness from existence, but if it saved humanity, it was a price he was willing to pay. But first, he would try to reason with Sirax one last time. "I'm offering you a chance to avoid a war you can't win," Hawk said, his tone firm. "Withdraw your fleet, and we can discuss terms of peaceful coexistence." Sirax narrowed his eyes. "Peace is for the weak. We will take what we want." The Xyrani leader severed the communication, leaving Hawk alone with his thoughts. He was out of options. The Xyrani fleet was moving, preparing to launch their assault on Earth. Hawk could feel the probe's systems buzzing with energy, the eye awaiting his command. This was it. He had one final choice to make. He said, his voice steady. "Initiate the overload sequence." The eye paused for a moment, as if it were considering the weight of Hawk's decision. Overload sequence initiated. Estimated time to detonation, 5 minutes. As the countdown began, Hawk took a moment to reflect. This wasn't how he had imagined his final moments. He had hoped to live out his days on Earth, surrounded by family, leaving behind a legacy of peace and progress. But now, his legacy would be one of sacrifice, of giving everything to protect the world he had loved. The seconds ticked by, and Hawk could feel his consciousness beginning to fade as the probe's systems powered up for the final burst of energy that would disable the Xyrani fleet. He thought of his wife, his children, And the people he had served, would they remember him as a hero, or would his sacrifice be forgotten, lost in the annals of history? It didn't matter. All that mattered was that Earth would be safe. As the final seconds counted down, Hawk closed his eyes, ready to embrace oblivion. The countdown approached 0, but something unexpected happened. Hawk felt a shift in the probe's systems. A strange pause just as the overload sequence was about to reach its climax. His consciousness, which had been fading, suddenly stabilized. Report, he commanded, confusion washing over him. Overload sequence interrupted, the eye responded. External interference detected. Command override initiated by an external source. Hawk was stunned. External source? What a question mark. Before he could finish the thought, a new voice broke into his consciousness. It wasn't the cold, mechanical tone of the eye or the arrogant voice of Syrax. This one was calm, almost neutral, but with a hint of authority that demanded attention. President Hawk, the voice said, your sacrifice is not necessary. The disorientation hit him like a wave, as if his awareness had suddenly expanded beyond the probe. He could feel something asymania inside his mind, but not in the same way the eye had ever been. This was different, more personal. Who are you? Hawk asked, instinctively bracing himself. Was this another Xyrani trick? Had they somehow gained control of the probe? I am Talron, representative of the Xyrani High Council. The voice responded. You have shown strength in a way that your enemies could not predict. Hawk struggled to make sense of the situation. He had been moments away from obliterating himself, from sacrificing his consciousness to stop an invasion. But now through a broken bar this Talron had stopped the process. The invasion was still happening. Or was it? You need to explain yourself quickly, Hawk said, pushing through the disorientation. What is this? Why did you stop the sequence? There was a pause, as if Talron were considering his words carefully. Your act of defiance impressed me. I have been observing the developments between your species and Commander Syrax. You should know that not all Xyrani agree with his methods. Hawk's confusion deepened. Not all Xyrani? This was the first time he had heard any indication of division within the alien race. Syrax is operating outside the bounds of our protocols, Talron continued. He sees humanity as nothing more than a stepping stone for Xyrani dominance in this sector. But there are those of us who value diplomacy who understand that brute force is not always the answer. Hawk's thoughts raced. Could this be true? Could there be a faction within the Xyrani willing to reconsider their approach? It seemed too good to be true, but there was something in Talron's tone, a sincerity he couldn't ignore. What do you want? Hawk asked cautiously. I want to help you, Talron replied. But you must trust me. I have the authority to override Syrax's command, to stop the invasion, but I cannot do it openly. He has powerful allies within the military who would support his actions regardless of the consequences. However, if I can secure an agreement with you as something that guarantees mutual benefit between our species, I can persuade the Council to recall the fleet. Hawk's skepticism remained, but he knew he had little choice. The alternative was to continue down the path of destruction, and while he had been willing to sacrifice himself, the possibility of avoiding that outcome of saving Earth without such a drastic measure was tempting. What kind of agreement are you talking about? Hawk asked. An alliance, Talron said simply. A pact between our civilizations. You will allow a small Xyrani presence on Earth, a diplomatic station to monitor and foster cooperation between our people. In return, the invasion will be called off, and we will share technology and resources with humanity that could benefit your development. It is a fair exchange. Hawk's instincts kicked in. The idea of allowing any alien presence on Earth was dangerous. It opened the door to potential manipulation, to long-term threats that he couldn't predict. But the Xyrani fleet was poised to strike. If he refused, there would be no Earth left to defend. You know I don't have the authority to make that decision, Hawk said, his mind calculating the risks. You are the only one who can make this decision, Talrine responded. Your world is unaware of the threat it faces. By the time they realize what is happening, it will be too late. The Zyrani fleet is ready. If you agree to my terms, I can stop this. Right now, Hawk felt the weight of the decision bearing down on him. He was no longer president, no longer the leader of humanity, but in this moment, he was the only one standing between Earth and annihilation. Could he really agree to such terms on behalf of an entire species? Could he trust Talrine, or was this just another form of conquest, dressed up in the language of diplomacy? I need assurances, Hawk said. If I agree to this, how do I know you won't betray us later? How do I know Syrax and his allies won't just come back once your station is in place? I understand your concerns, Talrine said. That is why I am prepared to give you something in return, as something that Syrax does not know about. We have a technology, an energy source that is far more advanced than anything your species has developed. I will give it to you as a sign of good faith. It will give Earth the means to defend itself should any future threat arise. Hawk felt a surge of hope. An advanced technology that could level the playing field? It sounded almost too good to be true, but Talrine's offer had the ring of authenticity. The Zyrani were arrogant, yes, but they were also pragmatic. If Talrine believed that Earth could be a valuable ally rather than an enemy, he might actually be telling the truth. You'll share this technology with us? Hawk pressed. Without strings attached? Without strings, Talrine confirmed. But only if you agree to the alliance. It is the only way to ensure your survival. The seconds ticked by in silence as Hawk considered the enormity of the decision. He was no longer a man of flesh and blood, but the weight of this moment felt more real than any decision he had made during his presidency. He could save Earth, but at what cost? Was this truly a path to peace, or just another form of subjugation disguised as diplomacy? But the alternative was clear: war. And Earth was not ready for that. He could buy time, and with the technology Talrine promised, humanity might have a fighting chance in the future. I accept your terms, Hawk said, his voice steady. On the condition that you deliver the technology you promised. I won't let Earth become a puppet for your people. We will remain independent. You have my word, Talrine said. The technology will be delivered within the cycle. Hawk exhaled, a strange sensation given that he no longer had lungs. He had made the deal, for better or worse. Now, all he could do was wait. Good, Talrine said. I will take care of Syrax. The connection faded, and Hawk felt the probe's systems recalibrate. The countdown to the overload had stopped completely, and the energy that had been building dissipated. Earth was safe, at least for now. As the probe drifted in the quiet expanse of space, Hawk allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had come here prepared to sacrifice everything, and in the end, he had found another way. It wasn't without risk. There were still questions, still doubts, but for the moment, he had bought humanity time. The eye reactivated. President Hawk, the Zyrani fleet has ceased its mobilization. Commander Syrax has been relieved of his command. The invasion is no longer imminent. Hawk nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over him. He had done it. He had stopped the invasion. But his work wasn't finished. There would be negotiations to navigate, agreements to solidify, and preparations to be made for the future. Humanity would need to be ready for whatever came next. For now, though, Earth had survived. And Daniel Hawk, disembodied though he was, had fulfilled his final duty.